Hi, I'm Marvine, and I used to believe that if I just worked harder, loved deeper, and stayed quiet longer, things would eventually get better. I was wrong. While I scrubbed toilets and stocked shelves through the night, my husband was gambling away everything in my name and calling me his personal slave behind my back. His family laughed. Mine told me to endure. They erased my name from photos, my voice from conversations, and eventually, my place in their world. But what do you do when the people closest to you aren't just letting you drown, but holding you underwater? And when I finally surfaced, would anyone believe what I'd been living through? I didn't need to open my eyes to know it was 4:30 a.m. The sound of the alarm didn't just wake me, it sliced through my body like a cold blade, cutting deep into the kind of fatigue you don't sleep off. My hand moved on instinct, slamming the button before the second buzz hit. I laid there for a few seconds, listening to Gareth breathing easily beside me, completely undisturbed. Of course he was. He hadn't had to wake up to reality in years. I slid my legs off the edge of the bed and sat still for a moment. My knees cracked like old furniture, and my back already ached from the night before. The apartment was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the cheap wall clock that always ran a few minutes fast. I didn't have the luxury of those few minutes. The bathroom light was too bright. I squinted as I looked at my reflection. There was a time I'd pause here and fuss with my hair or put on a little concealer. Now, I barely looked. I didn't need a mirror to know I had the face of a woman in survival mode. Eyes ringed with exhaustion, lips too dry to crack a smile, skin dulled from months of poor sleep and cheaper meals. In the kitchen, I made coffee with yesterday's grounds. Cream and sugar were luxuries I had long stopped buying. I poured the bitter brew into my travel mug, took a sip, and winced. Still, it was warm. That counted for something. As I laced up my discount sneakers, my gaze landed on Gareth's shoes by the door. Brand new Nikes, still in the box. I'd bought them after pulling a double at the diner and picking up an extra warehouse shift. He said he needed them for social credibility. His words, not mine. My stomach turned. He hadn't worked in 8 months, but God forbid he looked broke in front of his friends. It was moments like these, quiet, small ones, that hurt the most, not because of what they were, but because of what they said without speaking. I didn't matter, not really. My first job of the day was breakfast shift at the diner, a small spot downtown that smelled like bacon and broken dreams. Most of the regulars were truckers or retirees who called me sweetheart and didn't look me in the eye. Tips were better when I smiled, so I smiled until my cheeks went numb. By 11 o'clock, I was clocking out, walking 3 blocks in the wind to catch the bus to my second job, cleaning offices. It was quiet work, mostly empty conference rooms and stale coffee cups. I liked the silence. It gave me room to think, to plan, or sometimes to remember who I used to be before I became the woman who cleaned other people's microwaves for $13 an hour. Around 3 o'clock, I finished up, grabbed a sandwich I couldn't really afford, and headed to the warehouse. The graveyard shift, literal and figurative. By 10 o'clock p.m., my body ached so bad I had to remind myself to breathe deeply. Dale, my supervisor, made a comment as I passed him. "You got a strong back for someone so scrawny? You sure you ain't part machine?" I gave him a tight smile and kept moving. My throat burned with swallowed words. By the time I walked through the front door of our apartment that night, it was nearly midnight. Gareth was on the couch, controller in hand, mouth full of chips. "Hey, babe. We're out of Mountain Dew. Can you grab some tomorrow?" I didn't answer, just went straight to the bedroom and sat at the edge of the bed. I wanted to cry, but there were no tears left in me tonight. Just quiet, heavy nothing. The next afternoon, I was scheduled to clean Gareth's mother's place. She'd texted me last week to say she needed extra help setting up for a family barbecue. When I asked Gareth if I should come to the event afterward, he shrugged and said, "They probably don't want a worker there." That word, worker, stuck with me. Still, I figured I'd drop by to say hello once my shift was over. I wasn't trying to make a scene. Just show up, maybe help out a little. Be part of the family I'd been bending over backward to stay in. As I walked toward the backyard, I heard laughter from the open garage. I paused. "She's scared to lose him," Seraphine's voice carried easily, coated in syrupy superiority. "She'll keep doing what we need. She's like a personal slave," Gareth chimed in, laughing. "Pays off everything, still cooks, still begs for my attention." Laughter again, light, cruel, easy. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Something in me cracked, not snapped, just fractured in a clean, decisive way. The kind of break you feel in your soul more than your body. I walked away, quietly. No one saw me. Of course they didn't. Back in our apartment, I sat on the kitchen floor. The coffee pot light blinked red. The silence was louder than anything they said. So this is what I am to him. Not a partner, not a wife, just a convenience. A laborer with no paycheck. A placeholder in his life while he played pretend. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just stared at the fridge. The reminder of every meal I'd made, every lunch I packed, every bill I'd paid with calloused fingers and sleepless eyes. And then, I stood up. I walked to the bookshelf and pulled out a cheap spiral notebook I'd kept for grocery lists. I grabbed a pen. On the first page, in big letters, I wrote, "Day 1. If I'm just a slave in their story, it's time I write a new one." I didn't sleep that night. Not truly. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while Gareth snored beside me, unaware of the way his words had unraveled everything inside me. She's like a personal slave. I could still hear it in my head over and over, like a bad chorus in a song I never asked to hear. That one sentence did more than sting. It rewrote my understanding of the last 5 years. And as I lay there in the dark, I made myself a quiet promise. No more pretending. 2 mornings later, the promise was tested sooner than I expected. I had just come back from my cleaning shift, clothes still smelling like disinfectant, when I found a thick envelope from the bank slipped halfway through our mailbox. I assumed it was another statement, maybe a reminder about the car note, but when I opened it, my stomach turned before my eyes even scanned the page. Overdue balance, $6,412.93. Highline Credit Union. Credit line? In my name? I stood frozen in the doorway, reading it again and again, hoping it was some clerical error. But there it was. My name, my address, my signature. Except it wasn't my signature. I walked into the apartment slowly, shutting the door behind me with the kind of care you give to things on the edge of breaking. Gareth was on the couch, eating cereal out of the mixing bowl we used for pancake batter, feet propped up like a king on vacation. "Hey, babe, mail come?" he asked, without looking up from his phone. "Yeah," I replied, my voice flat. I held the envelope out toward him. "You know anything about this?" He glanced over lazily, then shrugged. "Oh, that. I meant to tell you. I opened that line last year. Needed to cover some stuff. Figured it'd help our credit, you know. Didn't want you to stress about it." "You signed it as me?" I said. "It's just paperwork. I was going to pay it off." He waved a spoon in the air like it was no big deal. "It's not like you were using your credit for anything." That last line, that was the one that made something click inside me, like a puzzle piece snapping into place, or maybe a bone. "I wasn't using my credit because I was too busy working off yours," I said, folding the letter back into the envelope. "Do you realize this is fraud?" "Come on, Marvine," he scoffed. "You act like I bought a house in your name or something. It was a few grand. Chill out." He was already turning back to his phone, conversation over in his mind, and for the first time, I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just walked to the kitchen, opened the junk drawer, and tucked the envelope beneath a stack of coupons. That night, as I stood at the diner refilling coffee for a man who never left more than $1 tip, I remembered something from almost a year ago. Gareth had come home with a manila folder and said, "I'll take care of the refinance stuff. You don't need to stress about it, babe. I've got it." I had nodded, grateful, too exhausted to look deeper. That had been the beginning, when he started using my name for his mess. I should have seen it sooner. But when you're busy holding everything up, it's hard to notice what's being taken from under you. 2 days later, I got my chance to learn just how deep it went. At my afternoon job, cleaning for a small accounting firm, I ran into Ellison in the break room. He was one of those calm types who wore ironed shirts and always said thank you. That day, he was finishing up a call, and when he hung up, I casually asked something I'd never thought to ask before. Hey, Ellison, if someone wanted to check if credit accounts were opened under their name, without permission, I mean, how would they do that? He looked at me over his glasses, then closed his laptop slowly. You think someone used your info? Just a hunch, I said. He motioned to a seat. Let's pull it up together. If it's just a hunch, it won't hurt to look. 15 minutes later, I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. Not only was there the Highline credit line, but 2 additional high-interest loans, each with balances over $3,000, both linked to my Social Security number, both signed with variations of my name in handwriting that mimicked mine, closely, but not closely enough. I stared at the screen, my breath caught somewhere between a gasp and a cry. Ellison placed a gentle hand near mine, not touching, just present. You're not alone in this, okay? It happens more than you'd think, but there are ways to fix it. I nodded slowly. I can't believe he'd do this, and then lie to my face. People who lie once don't usually stop at once, he said, voice low. When I got home that night, I found Gareth in the kitchen, making himself a sandwich with the last of the turkey. The bank letters were still in the drawer where I'd left them. Hey, he said. You good? I didn't answer, just walked past him, washed my hands, dried them on my shirt. You've been weird all week, he said, biting into the sandwich. You're not going to get all paranoid on me, right? I told you I had a plan. I was going to make it all back. You think I'm just some kind of scammer? You tell me, I said, turning to face him. What kind of husband takes out loans in his wife's name, then lies about it? He rolled his eyes. Here we go. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I'm making a big deal out of being betrayed. He scoffed. I did what I had to do for us. You think I liked it? You didn't ask me, I said. You never do. You just decide what's best and let me clean up the pieces. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. So now I'm the villain. Real nice. I didn't say anything, just walked into the bedroom and shut the door. Later that night, after Gareth had gone to bed, I pulled the bank statement from the drawer, took a photo of it with my phone, and emailed it to myself. Then I created a new folder on my drive titled Just in Case. That was step 1, because if Gareth thought he could keep spinning lies while I cleaned up after him, he was about to find out I was documenting everything. Step 1, don't let him control the paper trail. After sending the bank statement to myself, I stayed up for hours. The apartment was still, no TV, no snoring from the bedroom, just the hum of the fridge and the low rumble of my thoughts, too loud to ignore. At some point, I stopped staring at the ceiling and opened my laptop, scrolling through files, clicking through old emails. A strange urge hit me, one I couldn't quite explain. I found myself typing Gareth's name into the Facebook search bar. We weren't friends on the app. He had unfriended me months ago, claiming he was cleaning up his profile for work. That was laughable now. Still, I knew some of his friends were public. I clicked on one of them, some guy from his poker group, and there it was, like it had been waiting for me to look. A picture. Gareth, smiling like he hadn't in years, arms around a woman I didn't recognize. She was younger, thinner, dressed in a tight red dress, her arm draped around his shoulder. But it wasn't the woman that stopped me. It was what was on her wrist, my bracelet, silver, slim, engraved in cursive on the inside, AM, always. I felt my fingers go cold on the trackpad. The caption on the photo read, Special night with someone special. There were emojis after it, sparkles, hearts, the kinds of things Gareth hadn't sent me since our 2nd year of marriage. I stared at the screen like it might change, like maybe it was a mistake, maybe it was a copy, but I knew better. I had spent 2 whole weekends working back-to-back doubles just to afford that bracelet. I had skipped meals to make sure I could surprise him with something meaningful. And when I gave it to him, on our 4th anniversary, he had teared up. Or maybe that had been guilt. 3 months later, he said he lost it. Slipped off my wrist at the gym, he claimed. He was upset, told me he felt terrible. But there it was, on her, polished, proudly worn, like a trophy. I shut the laptop, not hard, not fast, just slow and steady, like someone closing the lid on something dead. I got up, poured myself a glass of water, then sat at the table and stared at the door for a long time. He wasn't home, probably at her place, or out, or wherever people like him go when the lies are still working in their favor. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the glass. I just went to the coat closet, pulled out the plastic storage bin I kept for tax papers and insurance files, and started a new section. I labeled a folder with a black Sharpie, Truth, all caps. Then I printed that picture. He'd lied about money. Now he was lying about love. But this lie was worse somehow, because it was personal, because it had been mine to give. Back when I bought the bracelet, I had pictured him wearing it for years. I imagined it aging with us, dulling with time, but always visible, like our commitment. I never imagined it being paraded on another woman's wrist like a token from a game I didn't know I was playing. That night, I didn't sleep either. But it was a different kind of insomnia, not the tired kind, the calculating kind. The next day, I made breakfast like usual. Gareth came home at 6:45 a.m., reeking of cologne that wasn't his and stale alcohol. He dropped his jacket on the chair and kissed me on the cheek like nothing was off. "Morning, babe," he muttered. I nodded and flipped the eggs. "Want toast?" "Sure." He didn't notice anything. He never did when things weren't on fire. After he showered and passed out on the couch, I took the photo and slipped it into an envelope. I didn't seal it. I wasn't mailing it, yet. I slid it into the back of my locker at the diner later that day, hidden behind a stack of pay stubs and breath mints. Gareth texted me around noon. "Can you pick up dog food after your shift?" We didn't have a dog. I didn't answer. Instead, I sat in the break room during my 10-minute break, sipping coffee, staring at the wall. The truth was, I had been walking on eggshells so long I forgot what a firm step felt like, but not today, not anymore. I could have confronted him that morning, could have shown him the picture, screamed, demanded answers. But what would that have done? He'd lie, he'd spin it. He'd say it was old or fake or that she borrowed it or he found it again and forgot to tell me. Gareth was good at stories, and I was tired of starring in the fiction. Confrontation gives him room to lie. Evidence doesn't. So I collected, quietly, like an archivist of betrayal. The days that followed were ordinary on the surface. I made dinner, I folded laundry, I helped Mrs. Peters from next door carry her groceries, but something had shifted inside me. I wasn't the same woman who nodded and smiled and said okay when he forgot our anniversary or made me cover the rent again. Now, every "hey babe" he muttered felt like a rope he was trying to tie tighter, and every chore I did felt like more leverage I was building, not for him, but for me. One night, he complained that the shower pressure was too low. "You ever gonna call the landlord about that?" he said while brushing his teeth. I folded the towel calmly. "I already did, weeks ago." He didn't reply. Another evening, he asked, "Did you take out the trash?" I looked up from my book. "No, did you?" He stared at me, confused, like I had spoken a foreign language. These weren't arguments, they weren't power plays, they were boundaries. And he didn't know what to do with them. Inside, I was building a fortress, not made of walls, but of facts, proof, awareness. It was growing, file by file, moment by moment. He thought he was trading up, new girl, new lies, new image. But I was trading too. I was trading every illusion I'd clung to for the strength to walk away without looking back. And he had no idea what was coming. I tucked the photo of the bracelet away like a secret weapon, not to be waved in anger, not to be used in a shouting match, but filed, time-stamped, and preserved. One more piece in the growing archive of truth I'd been curating in silence. The next evening, after cleaning an insurance office downtown, I rode the bus home and stopped by the grocery store to pick up a rotisserie chicken. Gareth had texted earlier, asking what was for dinner like I ran a restaurant. As I stood in line, I pulled out my phone and opened my messages. My finger hovered over the contact labeled Mom. I hadn't called her in months, not since her last subtle dig about me, always choosing chaos. But that night, I wanted to hear someone say they were proud of me for noticing the lies, for protecting myself, for finally seeing clearly. The phone rang twice before she answered. Her voice was flat. "Marvine, everything okay?" I hesitated. I found out Gareth took out loans in my name. He forged my signature. There's more. He's been lying about everything. A pause. Then she sighed. Well, everyone struggles, Mar. You chose him. It landed like a slap. Not because it was surprising, but because part of me still hoped she might say something different this time. Something motherly. I didn't choose to be lied to, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That's marriage, she replied. You just have to work through it. I felt heat rise to my face. He committed fraud, Mom. Look, I'm not saying it's okay, she said, annoyed now. But you always do this. Make everything a crisis. I blinked at the screen like it might change what I was hearing. You know what? I said softly. Thanks for the call. Before she could respond, I ended it. When I got home, Gareth was watching sports on the couch, his socks half off, takeout containers piled on the coffee table. I thought you were picking up something, he called as I set down the groceries. I did, I said flatly. It's in the bag. He didn't look up. I put the food away, washed my hands, and checked the mailbox on my way back in. That's when I saw it. An envelope from a law office I didn't recognize. Inside was a property review notice detailing that someone, Gareth, had requested to remove my name from the lease agreement on our apartment and close our joint account. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. Instead, I felt something colder, quieter. I stood in the kitchen, rereading the letter, while Gareth whined from the couch. Babe, did you grab any soda? I walked over to him, held the letter out, and let it fall into his lap without a word. He looked down, read the heading, and scoffed. You weren't supposed to see that yet. Wow, I said. You didn't even try to lie this time. It's just paperwork, he muttered. I was going to talk to you about it. After you removed me from everything? He threw the letter on the table. Why are you acting like this is some big betrayal? I'm protecting what's mine. You mean what I've been paying for? That's rich, he said, smirking. You think working 3 jobs makes you the hero here? You do chores. That's it. I felt the heat rising in my chest, but I kept my voice even. If you try to erase me, I'll show you exactly what I've been documenting. He laughed, full-throated, cruel. No one's gonna believe you. You can't even speak up without crying. That moment froze in time. His laughter. The dim lamp lighting only half his face. The hollow space between us that used to be filled with love, or at least the performance of it. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I turned, walked to our bedroom, and opened the drawer where I'd been collecting everything. Bank statements, screenshots, printouts, the picture of the bracelet. I added the property review letter to the folder, then locked the drawer. The next morning, I took the earliest bus across town. After my diner shift, I walked 2 blocks to Ellison's office. I had told him earlier in the week that I might need help opening a separate account. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and said, "Bring your ID and some time." We set up the account quietly. My name, my control. No more joint anything. When I got home, Gareth was out. I didn't care where. I went straight to the bedroom, pulled out my folder of proof, and slid it into my tote. Then I wrote a letter. Not a rant. Not a sob story. Just a list. Dates, amounts, names. A clear outline of what I knew and what I was ready to expose. I didn't even sign it. Later that evening, Gareth came in laughing on the phone with someone. I waited until he plopped down on the couch, then I walked over, placed the letter on his lap, and walked to the kitchen. He glanced at it, unfolded the page, and read. I didn't look back. I just rinsed a glass and let the silence stretch. He said nothing, but I knew he read every word. You were warned. The letter sat in Gareth's lap longer than it probably took him to read it. I didn't wait for his reaction. I finished rinsing my glass, dried my hands on the dish towel, and went into the bedroom, not to cry, not to shake, just to sit in quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like armor after you've been screamed over for years. 2 weeks passed without mention of the letter. He didn't bring it up, and I didn't ask. But things shifted. He got twitchy. Came home earlier, checked his phone more often, double-locked the front door like someone was coming for him. He just didn't know it was me. On a Thursday evening, I sat in the diner break room after my shift, scrolling my phone to decompress. One of the younger waitresses, Tori, came in with fries and sat across from me. She tilted her screen my way. "Hey," she said. "Aren't you married to Gareth Thompson?" I blinked. "Yeah. Why?" She turned her phone so I could see the Facebook post. It was Seraphine, Gareth's sister, posting a group picture from what looked like a dinner gathering. A family table, everyone dressed nicely, wine glasses and centerpieces. There he was, smiling, one arm around their mother, the other on the back of the chair where Seraphine sat. And in the corner of the photo, me, slightly out of frame, standing with a tray, face blurred by glare. The caption read, "Gareth and the family with our amazing helper." Helper. No name, no tag, just that word, like I was staff, like I wasn't the one paying for the wine on that table, or cooking half the meals, or folding the napkins they pretended magically appeared. I laughed, not the amused kind, the dry kind that cracks in the back of your throat. "You okay?" Tori asked. I nodded, pushing her phone gently back. "Yeah, just tired." But inside, something twisted. It didn't hurt. Not like it used to. It hardened. That night, I went home, printed that photo. Then I pulled the email thread between Gareth and the leasing agent I had quietly contacted, asking if he was attempting to remove me from the lease again. His wording in the reply, "Just need her off it for now, nothing serious," was already archived. I added it all to the truth folder. Then I printed the photo of Malis, the woman wearing my bracelet, and the receipts Gareth left behind from their hotel stays, marked with my card's last 4 digits. I slid all of it into a clean white envelope. I didn't sign it, didn't leave a note, just wrote the address I had memorized from the bottle of prescription medication I'd seen once on the bathroom counter. South Point Apartments, Unit 3B. The next morning, on my way to the diner, I dropped it into a mailbox near the transit stop. No stamp, no return address, just truth, hand-delivered. Gareth noticed a shift before anything else. 3 days after I mailed the envelope, he paced more. He bit his nails. He snapped at me over nothing. "Did you mess with my mail?" he asked once out of nowhere. I looked at him blankly. Why would I? He didn't respond. The next night, he came home late, slammed the door, tossed his keys on the counter too hard. "What happened?" I asked. He grabbed a drink from the fridge. "Some chick's flipping out over a misunderstanding. Thinks she knows everything." I raised my eyebrows. "Someone from work?" "Something like that," he mumbled. I didn't say another word. I just turned back to my cooking and stirred the soup. That night, I lay in bed and opened the voice memo app on my phone. "I don't want revenge," I whispered into the microphone. "I want a reckoning. I'm not trying to make him feel what I felt. I'm trying to stop pretending I don't feel it anymore." I paused, stared at the ceiling, then added, "I'm done proving I'm enough. It's time to prove they were wrong." The next day, on my lunch break, I went to a walk-in salon a few blocks from the diner, the kind with faded posters in the window and magazines from 5 years ago. "How much are you looking to take off?" the stylist asked. "All of it," I replied. She blinked. "All of it?" I nodded. She shrugged. "Okay, you sure?" I smiled. "Completely." It wasn't a dramatic cut. No cameras, no music swelling, just the snip of scissors and the pile of hair falling quietly onto the floor. And when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I didn't recognize. But not in a bad way. I looked like a woman who didn't have time for pretending anymore. When I got home, Gareth looked up from the couch, surprised. "Whoa, you cut it all off?" "Yep." He stared. "Why?" "It was heavy." He didn't get it. He wasn't supposed to. That evening, after he fell asleep, I opened my laptop, created a new email account, redemption folder at protonmail.com. No links to my name. No ties to anything else, just a safe space for screenshots, copies, backups, truth. Let's see how they handle it, delivered quietly, piece by piece. The email account was just the beginning. Once I opened it, something inside me clicked into place, like my spine straightened from years of being hunched in silence. Redemption folder wasn't just a name, it was a plan. Every screenshot, every receipt, every message I'd ignored was about to find a permanent home. By the following Tuesday, whispers had started. Small ones at first, floating through the air at the diner like faint cigarette smoke, noticeable if you inhaled too deep. It was in the way Linda from the morning shift looked at me. Usually, she'd chat about her grandkids or ask how my back was holding up. That day, she just handed me the creamer and said, "Hey, you okay? Gareth said you've been not well lately? That you're in treatment?" I blinked at her, not because I was surprised, but because I felt the heat flush up the back of my neck. "I'm fine," I said carefully. "Why would I be in treatment?" She hesitated. "He just mentioned you've been struggling, said it's been hard at home." Struggling, treatment, mental health. I forced a smile. He must be confusing me with someone else. That night, I went back to my new inbox and created a folder labeled defamation. I typed up the date, time, and Linda's comment, who said it, how, where. I didn't delete the message from Gareth that read, "Don't forget your refill. You've been extra snappy lately." That one had landed right after I confronted him about removing my name from our lease. The next day, I ran into Diane, a woman I'd gone to church with for years. We crossed paths at the grocery store by the frozen peas. She saw me and flinched. I smiled and said hello. She nodded, but didn't stop. "Everything good?" I asked, walking beside her cart. "Oh, yes, just behind schedule today," she mumbled, barely making eye contact. Later that evening, I saw the post on Facebook. "Pray for the ones who refuse help but need it most. Denial is a disease." Posted by Seraphine. I didn't comment. I didn't like it. I didn't even take a screenshot right away. I just closed the app and stood in my kitchen, hand gripping the edge of the sink, staring at the floor like it might give me answers. What Gareth was doing wasn't random. It was a campaign. He wasn't content just with betrayal. He wanted to make sure no one believed me when I told the truth. He wanted to blur the lines before I even opened my mouth. I called Ellison the next morning, asked if I could stop by after work. I didn't tell him what it was about. He just said, "Of course," and gave me a time. His office was quiet, the way offices get right after closing. I brought my notebook, a flash drive, and my voice that was shaking, but still mine. "I need to protect myself," I told him, closing the door behind me. "Tell me what's going on," he said calmly, folding his hands on the desk. I showed him the messages, the comments, the indirect digs from family and friends. I told him about the mental health rumors, about how he was creating a narrative where I was unstable, erratic, unreliable. Ellison's face didn't shift much, but he tapped his pen twice before speaking. "This is serious. It's character assassination, and it's strategic." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm not letting it go." He helped me understand digital footprint tracing, helped me create secure backups, suggested I save everything on both cloud and physical drives. He offered to connect me with a friend, an attorney who specializes in defamation cases. I thanked him, then walked the 2 blocks home in the early dark, fall wind tugging at my sleeves. On the way, I passed a man arguing loudly with someone on his phone, and a woman laughing too loudly from a patio table. The world kept moving. Mine was sharpening. Later that night, Gareth came home early. He tossed his keys on the counter and stared at me like he was waiting for me to speak first. "People are asking questions," he said. "About what?" "You know what." "No," I said, folding a dish towel. "I don't." He sighed like I was the child in this conversation. "You're making this hard on yourself. If you just calmed down, stopped acting like everything's a battle, people wouldn't be so concerned." "You mean if I stayed quiet?" I said. He smiled in that tight, dismissive way. "Exactly." I faced him fully. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. "I'm not unstable," I said. "I'm underestimated." He actually laughed. "You think anyone's gonna listen to a waitress with burnout and a chip on her shoulder?" "Maybe not now," I replied. "But soon, they'll hear me clearly." He walked off, muttering under his breath. Something about me being bitter and unhinged. I didn't care. I went back to the table, opened my notebook, and logged every word. The next morning, after breakfast, I took the truth folder, the physical one, and walked it to a bank across town. I opened a safety deposit box under my name only. I placed the folder inside, locked it, and signed the access sheet with a pen that didn't tremble. He's playing with fire. And I've started collecting the matches. I walked out of the bank that morning with my head higher than it had been in years. The key to the safety deposit box was warm in my hand, and the weight of the truth folder, tucked neatly inside that steel drawer, lifted something heavy off my chest. I didn't know when I'd need it, but I knew I would. Gareth hadn't stopped trying to discredit me, and now that he couldn't erase me legally, he was going to try publicly. I didn't realize how quickly I'd get my chance. Later that week, during my short lunch break at the diner, I scrolled through Facebook while waiting for my sandwich to heat. That's when I saw it. Seraphine had posted an invite flyer, clean, overly polished, clearly made on Canva. Celebration dinner honoring Gareth Thompson, family first, always. The date was 2 days away. A rented banquet hall in the north part of Asheville. Dress code, semi-formal. Start time, 6 o'clock p.m. No mention of spouses, no +1s, no tag, no text, nothing. I stared at it for a good minute before I saved the image to my phone. He thought he'd win the crowd while I stayed quiet in the wings. Fine, let him set the stage. I'd bring the script. By Saturday afternoon, I had everything ready. My black dress wasn't new, but it fit well, simple, timeless. My hair, still short from the last cut, was slicked back and pinned. I packed my file case with printed receipts, screenshots, the bank statements, the lease documents, the fake signature copies, the hotel bills, and the photo of Malis wearing my bracelet. Then I added 3 more things, contacts for each of the women who'd reached out to me after word got around. Rowena was the first. She had messaged me 2 weeks ago after a mutual friend said, "You're not the only one Gareth used." She was calm, direct, and had legal proof of Gareth using her credit while they were together. Malis, his latest, had gotten my anonymous envelope and finally reached out from a burner account. She didn't know everything, but now she wanted to. And then there was Sandra, one of my co-workers, who had overheard Gareth talking about how good he had it with his personal slave of a wife. Me. I coordinated with them all. I asked them to be at the event at 6:20. I'd go in first. As the sun began to set and Asheville took on its early autumn chill, I drove across town in silence. When I pulled up to the banquet hall, I didn't hesitate. I walked in 15 minutes after the event started. The room buzzed with chatter and the clink of silverware. Dozens of people, cousins, in-laws, family friends, lined round tables with candles and faux gold centerpieces. A slideshow was playing on the far wall, photos of Gareth through the years, smiling, laughing, pretending. I walked slowly, deliberately toward the center. A few heads turned, then a few more. Gareth saw me first. His mouth opened like he'd seen a ghost. Seraphine stood beside him, wearing a wine-red dress and a fake smile that cracked the moment she saw me. I said nothing. I placed my file case on the buffet table, unzipped it, and began laying out documents, neatly, row by row. I spread the photos, the statements, the hotel bills. I placed the image of Malis front and center. I didn't need a mic. The room grew quiet like a power outage. I spoke once. "I was never your slave," I said calmly, my voice clear but not loud. "I was the fool who believed your promises." The double doors opened. Rowena walked in first, dressed sharp, holding a folder. Then Malis followed, visibly shaken but steady. Sandra came last, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Gareth tried to speak, stepping forward. "What the hell is this?" Rowena handed him a thick manila envelope. "This is the credit report you manipulated, the fake joint account, remember?" Malis pulled up a text on her phone. "So when you said your wife was in a facility for mental health and couldn't sign things, that was just more of the story?" He stammered. "You don't know the whole—" Sandra cut him off. "I do. I work with her. I heard you bragging about her being your maid, your meal ticket." Seraphine stormed forward. "This is a family event." "No," I said, looking directly at her. "This is a reckoning." The room was still. No one moved. Gareth's voice rose in desperation. "This is harassment. This is slander. I can sue all of you." Rowena smiled. We're ahead of you. These are legal notices. You'll be hearing from our attorneys. Malis stepped back. I'm done with you, Gareth. And then, the thing that ended it all. The slap. Malis didn't hesitate. She just lifted her hand and gave him one clean, open-palmed blow across the face. The sound echoed. He stood frozen, stunned, embarrassed. Seraphine grabbed her purse and walked out. A few others followed. I didn't stay to watch the collapse. I zipped up my case, turned around, and walked out without another word. Only the sound of my heels tapping across the polished floor followed me. He thought I'd come undone. I came prepared. The courthouse hallway smelled like old paper and stale coffee. My heels echoed as I walked down the corridor, passing plaques that read, Family Division, as if the words themselves didn't already sting with irony. I clutched my black leather folder against my chest, its contents neatly organized, color-coded, labeled. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because chaos had defined too much of my life. Today, it wouldn't. Ellison met me outside courtroom C. He wore a charcoal gray suit that gave him the air of someone in full command, though his tone never changed, steady, measured. You good? He asked. I nodded. I'm not nervous. Good, he said, offering a small smile, because you shouldn't be. The door opened, and I stepped into the room. The space was small, just rows of worn benches, a modest judge's bench, and the lingering scent of nervous sweat and legal briefs. Gareth sat at the defense table, slouched, his tie crooked. His lawyer leaned in to whisper something to him, and Gareth glanced back just long enough to catch my eyes. He didn't smirk this time. Didn't flinch either. But he knew. He knew I came with fireproof evidence and nothing left to lose. I took my seat beside my attorney, Clarice James, a woman with steel in her spine and ice in her gaze. She didn't look at me much, didn't need to. We were in sync by now. The judge, a woman in her 50s with no patience for drama, began the proceedings swiftly. Clarice rose first, laying out the case methodically. Unauthorized loans, forged signatures, gambling withdrawals. Testimonies from 3 women Gareth had financially and emotionally manipulated during our marriage. She moved like a surgeon, cutting clean, leaving no room for doubt. Each piece of paper she handed over landed with precision. The judge reviewed the stack, glasses perched low on her nose. Mr. Thompson, she said, looking up after several long minutes. Do you dispute these charges? Gareth's lawyer rose. Your Honor, my client would like to note that all financial activity was done in the interest of maintaining household stability. Clarice cut in before the sentence could land. Without the legal consent or knowledge of my client, Your Honor. This is not about miscommunication. This is identity theft within marriage. The judge looked back to Gareth. Do you deny forging your wife's name on these documents? Silence. Then, weakly, I didn't think it'd matter. The courtroom stayed quiet, but I felt Ellison shift slightly beside me, like even he couldn't believe Gareth said that out loud. The judge leaned back in her chair. Ms. Thompson, you are hereby absolved of any financial responsibility tied to the listed debts. Mr. Thompson is solely accountable for repayment and restitution. Additionally, the court mandates enrollment in a financial accountability program. Non-compliance will result in further legal consequences. The gavel hit once. But I wasn't finished. Clarice stood again. Your Honor, we are also filing a civil countersuit for fraud, identity misuse, and character defamation. She placed another folder on the judge's desk. Inside, Gareth's messages claiming I was mentally unwell, a fabricated diagnosis he'd shared with others to discredit me, screenshots of slanderous comments, statements from co-workers, neighbors, and former friends. Gareth leaned toward his lawyer. She's trying to bury me. The judge raised a hand. Mr. Thompson, any further interruptions will be noted as contempt. Clarice continued. My client is seeking damages for reputational harm, emotional distress, and breach of marital trust with financial consequences. The judge flipped through the document silently for a few minutes. Then she looked directly at Gareth. This court finds ample grounds for the plaintiff's claim to proceed. Mr. Thompson, you will respond to these charges through formal proceedings within the next 30 days. Another gavel strike, a second silence, and just like that, it was done. When the courtroom emptied, Gareth didn't look back. He slouched out the side door, his lawyer behind him, already whispering damage control. The same man who used to say, "We're a team," now looked like a man with no backup, no strategy, and no armor. Ellison and Clarice shook hands outside. I thanked them both quietly. Then I stepped out onto the front steps alone. The sky had that flat winter light, gray but not angry. I pulled my coat tighter and let the air fill my lungs, cold, clean, crisp. I walked slowly toward the parking lot. Each step felt steadier, not because the ground changed, but because They told me I was too emotional, I thought to myself, that I wouldn't survive without him, that I'd collapse under pressure. But I didn't collapse. I adapted. I changed shape. I moved through every insult, every accusation, every quiet betrayal, and I came out unrecognizable to the woman who once begged for scraps of respect. At the car, I opened the door, slid into the seat, and took one last glance at the building behind me. A courthouse. Just brick and wood and bureaucracy. But today, it had become something else. A place where truth was heavier than charm, where paper and memory and silence finally counted. I looked down at the temporary plates still fixed to the back of my car. It was registered under one name now, mine. No Gareth, no joint account, no shared liability, just Marvine. Let him pay with interest. I'm done paying for anything that broke me. 6 months had passed since that final day in court, and if someone had told me a year ago that I'd be living alone, content, and not checking my phone in fear, I wouldn't have believed them. But here I was, sitting at a small kitchen table in Columbia, South Carolina, stirring a spoonful of honey into my coffee as sunlight stretched across the hardwood floor of my one-bedroom apartment. Outside, a neighbor's wind chimes tapped gently in the breeze. Inside, soft jazz played from a speaker tucked near the bookshelf. The morning didn't feel heavy. It didn't feel like something I had to survive. It just was. I reached over to mist the leaves of my snake plant, then watered the basil I kept on the windowsill. I never used to be a plant person. I always thought I'd kill them or forget to care. But they thrived here, quietly. So did I. My catering side hustle, Soul Steam, had grown faster than I expected. At first, it was just me renting kitchen time in a shared commissary, filling small orders for office lunches and birthday brunches. Now I had regular clients, recurring orders, and even a part-time assistant named Kelsey who brought more laughter than I knew I needed. The work was mine, not something I was dragged into, not something I gave up pieces of myself for. It came with sweat, early mornings, burned fingers, and tight margins, but it belonged to me. After pouring my coffee into a thermos for later, I sat down with my laptop. I'd started journaling again, just little thoughts. Observations, things I never gave myself permission to say out loud when I was still surviving Gareth's chaos. I opened a blank note and stared at the blinking cursor, then typed, "There is a difference between forgiving and inviting someone back into your life. I've done the first, the second is not required." I had drafted a message to my mother the week before, an honest, polite check-in. But before hitting send, I reread it, then deleted the whole thing, not in anger, just in clarity. I forgave them, quietly, I wrote that day. But I don't owe them my presence. And I meant it. That same afternoon, after finishing a delivery to a local nonprofit, I sat outside under the shade of a crepe myrtle and checked my phone. A new message glowed on the screen from an unfamiliar number. "Hey, it's Gareth. I know this is probably not what you want to see. I've been going through it, evicted last month. No car, just need a little help, please. No, how are you? No apology, no mention of the lawsuits, the debt, the woman he lied to after me. Just a plea, plain and entitled, as if history were a chalkboard he could wipe clean. I stared at it for a moment, then I deleted it. There was a time, God, not that long ago, when I would have sent him gas money, would have rationalized it. He's still a person, I would have said. It's just temporary, he's lost. But I'd stopped confusing guilt with grace. Now I sent nothing. And I felt nothing. A few days later, I met Ellison for lunch. We'd kept in touch, Not every day, not with pressure, just easy check-ins, conversations over coffee, occasional collaboration on his church's financial literacy workshops. That day, we met at a small place near the river. Wooden tables, fresh bread, quiet vibes. He pulled out my chair. "You look well," he said. I smiled. "I feel still, if that makes sense." "It does," he said. Then, after a beat, "You never needed saving, you know. You just needed space to grow." I didn't rush to reply. I let the words land. Let them sit there without needing to fill the silence with nerves or jokes. "I think I finally understand that," I said. He nodded. "You're allowed to have ease now." I looked out the window, watching two kids chase bubbles on the sidewalk. "I don't know what's next," I said, "but I'm not scared of it." Later that night, I returned home, pulled off my shoes, and lit a candle that smelled like cedar and something warm. I tidied the counter, fed the cat I'd adopted from the shelter, and hung up my apron. Then I stood in the living room, eyes drifting to the framed photo above my bookshelf. It was one of the few I'd brought with me. Just me and Eulalie, my grandmother. She was sitting in her old armchair, knitting, and I was laughing with a cup of tea in hand. She had always believed in me long before I believed in myself. I traced the frame gently with my finger. "I was never anyone's slave," I whispered aloud. "I just forgot I was free all along." Then I turned off the lights, locked the door behind me, and let the night wrap around a piece that was finally mine. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight back with anger, but to walk away with everything they thought you'd never have: peace, clarity, and control. This story isn't just about betrayal, it's about reclaiming your voice when others tried to silence it. Have you ever felt erased by the people closest to you? Share your story in the comments. We read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe for more true-life revenge stories and emotional journeys that stay with you long after the screen fades to black.